Well, by the time some of you view this podcast or see it or listen to it, Craig Counsell will be baseball's number one free agent as far as managers are concerned. It's been the talk of the early offseason for some of these teams. We'll give you the latest news coming up next here on Locked On Brewers.
You are Locked On Brewers, your daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Recording this on a Tuesday night. Happy Halloween. I was going to wear a mask, do what Giannis did last night, wear his incredible Hulk costume, but no, going to just tell it like it is. Because who knows, we're going to be losing our manager or not by the time this drops down the next morning. It was almost 30 years ago that we lost Paul Molitor overnight. Went to bed December 4th, 1992, was in Eau Claire. The Brewers had tendered Molitor a contract, and I got to the radio station the next day, early in the morning, 4 a.m., and looked at the wire, and Molitor had signed a 3-year contract with the Toronto Blue Jays. I couldn't believe it. Will this be the case this time with Craig Counsell? Will we be getting up on Wednesday morning and finding out Craig Counsell, no longer a member of the Milwaukee Brewers, going to New York? Could be possible, but this is really a fluid situation, moment by moment. I wanted to wait till nighttime before I drop the episode, the very latest. Catch you guys. Some of you guys like to watch this at night. And of course, when you drop it in the morning and your way to work and all that, thank you very much. Chuck Freeman, Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Google, Spotify, Apple. We're on all the major downloads. We're the number one Brewer podcast on the network because of you guys out there, the great Brewer fans on the internet. We're the number one podcast. Also, you can get us on YouTube. Go to YouTube, search Locked On Brewers, hit the subscribe button, hit that bell. We're here off season with breaking news with you. Sitting around Tuesday, doing my various other radio and TV duties, keeping an eye on Twitter, just making sure I don't miss anything. And of course, the latest is that Counsell is now interviewed for both the Cleveland Guardians and New York Mets managerial posts. And the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel is now reporting that the Houston Astros are interested in Counsell. These teams have job openings. The Mets, Cleveland, Houston, Anaheim, San Diego, and technically Milwaukee has an opening because he's going to be a free agent by the time, wake up tomorrow morning. If, maybe not even before that, who knows? But yeah, Counsell apparently met with both franchises, met with the Mets today, met with Cleveland yesterday, and so far no news. Again, either team may be waiting to contract expires with the Brewers, or maybe Counsell told them, hey, I want to go back and talk to Mark Attanasio. Now, I was on a talk show in La Crosse today, John Papadopoulos, good guy. And he asked me if I thought that Counsell was going to match, or if Attanasio was going to match an offer. Let's say he got $8 million from the New York Mets. I don't think the Indians or the Guardians would do that. They paid $4.5 million for Terry Francona. He was the highest paid manager in the league. So would they go $8 million? I don't know. Mets, I think what we're going to start seeing, though, I bet you we do start seeing managers, their salaries escalate. And maybe Craig Counsell is going to be the forefront of that, a pioneer of raising the bar. But there ain't a heck of a lot of candidates out there. There aren't. I mean, Stephen Vogt, Carlos Beltran. I mean, who are the candidates that we're going against here? The only name I see out there is Stephen Vogt. Andy Green? Who are the candidates? Are they bidding against anybody? Bidding against other teams? But Counsell, I mean, he's bidding against himself. He's in a one-horse race here. And nobody's else. Who else? What other manager? He's the number one free agent out there. Nobody else. Who else? Now, there could be a guy who we're not even talking about here who could turn out to be a great manager. Maybe a bench coach or whatever. We don't know. You just don't know. I always feel like when teams go out and make this big splash, like the Mets, they went out and signed, got Buck Showalter and, Anaheim, Joe Madden a couple of years ago. Teams make this big splash. We're bringing in this guy. It seems like it just never works. Sometimes it does, not all the time, but sometimes it does work. But I just feel like when some of these teams make this big splash, sometimes it never turns out like you hope. But, you hear the same reports as I do, that him and his wife both like New York. But, I was asked today, do I think Mark Attanasio would match? Considering he's throwing money, $6 million, $7 million at a player. You would think throwing $8 million at Craig Counsell. But as I said, Counsell could look at it, Mark, you don't have to throw me $8 million. But I've been at $3.5 million. Where was this before? Did I have to get into a bidding war for you to up my salary? And plus, let's say Attanasio was going to give him $8 million. If it came down to Mets and Brewers, okay, yeah, we all love Whitefish Bay, okay, but again, you have a better shot at winning in New York. In New York, there's no excuses. That's why a manager can win Manager of the Year one year and get fired the next, because he's given all the resources. In Milwaukee, you have some leeway, okay? Phil Garner can go on a little bit. Ron Renicky might be able to go on a little bit, okay? You might be able to buy yourself some time because you have a built-in excuse with the Milwaukee Brewers. There's no built-in excuses with the Mets, maybe some with Cleveland, but certainly not the New York Mets. And not that you're looking to find out if you're going to be there's a built-in excuse, but also, again, if you go to New York, I think the best situation to go to is where you're trying to build a program. You're trying to build something. You're starting at a team that did not at all contend and was supposed to contend. Now the Braves ran away with the division, but the Mets weren't even close. So, you go into a situation, it's not like you're managing a team that's won 97 games a year on an average. They didn't make the postseason. So you have nowhere to go but up. Nowhere to go but up. Green Bay Packer head coaching job, you average 10, 11 wins a year. That's the standard. And when you don't win 10 games, then the seat gets hot. In New York, yeah, you sink to the bottom like you did, you're going to lose your job. But then you come back and you rise it up. Yeah, people are going to love you. And I read on Twitter too, some people say, well, why would he want to go to New York to deal with the New York media? Embracing the Big Apple. His family embraces, his wife does, he does, embraces the Big Apple. Counsell doesn't worry about that pressure. I can tell you that right now, dealing with the media. And the New York media isn't what it once was. WFA. Now, there's the days of and this is sad, the days of a newspaper columnist, a sports columnist, those have gone in newspapers. And that was the problem in New York, because it was these columnists that would write scathing articles about teams, about players, about managers. That doesn't happen anymore because the way the newspaper industry is sadly gone. We don't have the sports columnists anymore. I wish we did, but we don't. There is no sports columnists in the state of Wisconsin. Jim Polzin for the State Journal. Yeah, he's a beat writer, and then he writes columns as well. Sure he does. Milwaukee Journal has no standardized columnists. Michael Hunt was the last guy. Occasionally you might see a column. You see some of the beat writers write feature columns and all that, but you don't see a daily 3 or 4 time a week columnist. And that's what it was in New York. But since the newspaper industry sadly has dried up and they're just trying to stay afloat, they can't afford paying a guy, $100,000 a year to write a column 3 times a week. So the biggest thing in New York is WFAN. The sports columnists are now WFAN, the radio station, the all sports station, the backbone of sports talk in that town. Yeah, there's another sports station as well. ESPN New York, it is too, but their afternoon guy is a Yankee guy, Michael Kay. But New York Mets, they're all about WFAN. They talk a lot about the New York Mets, a lot. Talk about the Yankees too, but a lot about the New York Mets. A lot about the New York Mets. So that's the story. Is he afraid of New York media? No. But there's 6 other openings right now. He's being considered for 4 of them. The Mets, Cleveland, now Houston, apparently, according to the Journal Sentinel, Milwaukee, obviously, Anaheim and San Diego are the only positions that are open that his name has not been considered for. Only ones. All right, we'll come right back and talk about, I want to get to Mark Attanasio and his role in this as well, because of course he's got a role in it. Of course he's got a role in it. Chuck Freeman, Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. This show is brought to you by FanDuel. Score this NFL season. FanDuel, America's number one sports book. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, no better time to get on the action right now. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options out there. Spreads, player props, over and unders, and a whole lot more. But go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Kick off the NFL season right. We're a few weeks into it. The World Series, NHL, college, NBA, FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. We'll come right back and get to a few more things next here on Locked On Brewers. Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. One option we could rule out with Craig is he's not retiring. You know, there were some thoughts out there that instead of going to New York, we would assume that Counsell would retire and spend a time, watching his kids play baseball in college, maybe his two younger girls play high school sports. But it seems now he's not retiring. He is not stepping away from a game. Sounds like Counsell wants to manage in 2024. So he wouldn't be going to Cleveland. He wouldn't be going to New York. He would have probably announced his retirement right about now, or that he was stepping away. So this thought that during the season, he was going to take some time off, I think we can clear that out of our minds. That he's trying to find the best option. 53 years old, a lot of energy, trying to find what is best for him. Strike while the iron is hot. It works in every walk of business. The New York Mets reportedly are starting to going to look at other candidates. I don't know who. Stephen Vogt? Who knows? I don't know. But where does Mark Attanasio play in this role? Well, would he give $8 million to Craig Counsell? I don't know. Because with Attanasio, then where was it stop? If Counsell sets the bar for $8 million with the Brewers, and another team next year or in a couple of years comes back and wants to give him $12 million, he's raising the bar on salaries. The Mets work with a budget, but they don't. The Brewers strictly work with a budget. They work with a budget. There's a set price for everything for them. The Mets can spend $440 million and throw money around. Cleveland, to a certain extent, maybe. Brewers, certainly not. Would they pay $8 million? Certainly, if you're going to pay, player salaries, some of the player salaries, and if the managers' salaries are going to escalate, maybe a few years from now, $8 million might be a bargain for him, for anybody as a manager. But right now, I do think because of a lack of candidates out there, that's why Counsell can set the price so high. Is he going to get $8 million? I don't know. I really don't think it's just all. I mean, of course, there's money involved in this, but it's also what kind of groceries are going to give me? What kind of ingredients are going to give me to cook the meal? That's too. And with New York, and again, to a certain extent with the Mets, but more so with New York, you have what Mark Attanasio cannot offer you. And that is open up that paycheck and you can make trades. You can acquire free agents, big time free agents. What's the Brewers' option? Well, are they going to trade Corbin Burns? What bargain basement free agent? Who are they going to sign in the offseason? Who a reclamation project are they going to try to find and bring in as a minor league signee, non-roster inviting, and just hope, and the guy will light it up in spring training, make the roster and do nothing during the regular season. Meanwhile, we got to look at him come to the plate. That's what it's going to come down to. That's what the Brewers stand. Sadly, that's where we are. Want to touch on one more thing. We'll talk about Willie Adames coming up next, and what his future might be with the Milwaukee Brewers. That's next here. Chuck Freeman on Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Welcome back to Locked On Brewers. Chuck Freeman here. Willie Adames, he's probably going to make around $12 million. I don't think there's a lot of value out there for him, considering what he did this past year, which is nothing. Is he even worth $12 million? The Brewers were smart a few years ago. A couple years ago, when they were trying to buy him out of his team-owned years, you know, the where the teams got him under control. I thought, man, you know, you got Adames here. Smart thinking. That was really smart. They didn't, because now they could be on the hook for 20, 25 million a year. We're looking at our left fielder making 25, 30 million a year and wish we had never signed that deal. At least I wish wouldn't. Because, you know, 275 and 19 home runs isn't worth it on a team like the Milwaukee Brewers. Your rate on return. But Willie Adames at $12 million? I think the Brewers would do that for one more year. Is he going to get an extension with the team? No. Would they trade him in the offseason? Likely. You wouldn't get what you would have got with him last offseason. 2 years of control and better talent in return. This year, maybe not so much so, because of the season he had. He still popped some home runs. The average wasn't low. Struck out way too much with Willie Adames. All right, it's going to do it. Want to step in real quickly here and talk about Craig Counsell. We will be back. If Counsell news breaks, we will be back dropping another episode talking about that. So we'll be back. Chuck Freeman, Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Have yourself a great night. Hang in there, Brewers fans.